So, my favourite reads of 2023. Now, this is not necessarily books that came out in 2023. This is books that I read, maybe even reread, and enjoyed immensely. This is excluding manga, because I'm going to do a separate list on manga, because I want to. Now, I did do another short list for Omar over on Near Mint Condition. I'm pointing over there like he's over there. I don't know if he's over there. Either way, I did a list for him, and I haven't purposefully included any books that I put on that list, but that list still stands. But I'm a different Chris today, and I don't want to include all of those books, so you can check that out separately. I'll link in the description below. And this is in order, so I will begin. First off, Joseph Smith and the Mormon by Noah Van Sciver. Trust me, I was as shocked as you probably are that I picked this book, because I really didn't think I would enjoy it as much as I did. The cartoon work of Noah Van Sciver is just fantastic. It's really kind of, simplistic art, but coloured really well. Composition's really good, paneling, straightforward 6 to kind of 8 panel grids and then splash pages. This stripped back artistry I seem to be enjoying more, because again, it's so immediate that it gets across the story, the emotions, the characters. The further you go away from photorealism and the more kind of cartoonish you get, the more immediate the recognition of what's going on the panel is, and I kind of like that sometimes. But the story here was what really intrigued me. I knew a bit about Joseph Smith. There's a Mormon church down the road from me, a Church of the Latter-day Saints, and there's a strong Mormon community in the town I'm from, and a Mormon history, and so I knew of Mormon history and a lot of it, but I wanted to kind of find out more, and particularly I wanted to find out in the comic form, really, and this didn't disappoint. Yeah, it maybe left one or two little bits out of his life, but overall it does a superb job of kind of giving shape and order to a very strange life in Joseph Smith, because again, he starts out in a very weird place and never really leaves that weird place, I don't think. It's a really unique place of how a religion and how religious people and people's views and ideas in general, how they form, how they take shape, how they are interpreted on the world around you. And Joseph Smith's story goes in so many different directions, from, representing communities to building towns and safe havens, to forming the religion itself, to being a womanizer, to being kind of a con man in many people's eyes. It really does have elements of all of the kind of great period stories that you would think of. And when I read it, I realised just how insane it must have been to be Joseph Smith, because the stuff he goes through and how he eventually ends his life is just bonkers. And this book did a really good job of portraying all that really strongly, I thought. Now, I was near picking Super Spy, but I reread Mind Management at the same time by Matt Kindt. And even though I loved Super Spy and I really enjoyed that kind of clandestine spy thriller of all these interlinking shorter stories, I reread Mind Management in these 3-volume omnibuses, and it was just fantastic. I loved Mind Management. It was just such an enjoyable read, such a unique and different read. I understand that Matt Kindt's artwork and Matt Kindt's style is not to everyone's taste, but I love it. And here is, I would say that this is his magnum opus. This is the best Matt Kindt that you can get, I think. Super Spy came close, but still fell quite short of this. Department H, that fell really short. I thought that was pretty bad in general, to be fair, but either way, this was amazing. It follows kind of Maru, who wakes up on a flight with no memory, and she tries piecing her life back together, and she gets sucked into this world of a clandestine organisation that trains normal people to do extraordinary things, like become immortal, like use telekinesis. And again, the whole world is slowly kind of unravels as you go through it, and you get deeper and deeper into it, but then it shifts pace and direction so much that it's kind of dizzying when you read it for the first time and overwhelming. But the second time and subsequent times you read it, things get kind of more refined and more interesting, and I think that's why the second time around I really just adored going through this book again. Second time round, I knew that it was kind of constantly shifting directions and constantly throwing red herrings and different characters in the mix and constantly kind of going back and going forward and going back and going forward. And yeah, and the whole kind of history of mind management as an organisation and Meru's story is just great, and I can't praise these up enough. Get them in these omnibuses as well, because there's extra material in these, and this is definitely the best way to read mind management, I would say. Don't worry about chasing down the hardbacks. Get these. Next, Richard Sala, The Chuckle and Watch-It. This blew me away. I've got a video on this already, so I'll leave that in a link in the description below. So I won't spend too much time on this because you can have a watch of that. Richard Sala's work, I hadn't experienced before. I picked this up because for the love of comics, Anshuman had recommended this amongst other Richard Sala work. And it got a reprint in this hardback version from Fantagraphics, so I just grabbed it and I couldn't put it down. It's such a weird and wonderful world. It's all about a journalist who gets embroiled into this kind of really weird mystery and really strange world. You know, horoscope writers are being killed and they think the Gull Street Ghoul has come back murdering people, a Jack the Ripper-esque kind of slasher, and everyone's after this kind of MacGuffin called the Chuckle and Watch-It, which is almost kind of little doll effigy that has this weird laugh. And there's outsider artists and like so much going on, but it's bonkers. It's purposefully overly complicated and complex and farcical, so it's really funny and enjoyable, and you don't mind when it's kind of playing fast and loose with the pace and the plot and the ridiculousness of all of it. And the artistry is so kind of like weirdly cartoony, gothic. It's just great. I enjoyed this immensely. Have a watch of the video. I'm sure I'm more eloquent on that than I am here. But The Chuckle and Watch-It by Richard Sala, number 3. My number 2 read is Worm by Adele Rodriguez, a Cuban-American odyssey. Fantastic artwork, a fantastic story that I knew very little of. Non-fiction book following Adele Rodriguez, who is a very well-known American artist now, publishes covers for Time magazine and other things. But this is his experiences of growing up in Fidel Castro's Cuba in the 70s and then leaving in 1980 on a boat and finding a new life in America. But it's so much more than that because it gives such an interesting personal insight into what life was like in Fidel Castro's communist Cuba during this period. It goes back to tell his parents and grandparents and sisters and other people's stories and neighbours' story, and it's got such a personal touch and feel that it taught me more about what it's like to kind of live in this type of community, in this time and this place, than anything else I've read. And I've read quite a lot on Cuba and the communist revolution and other things like that. But this was different because it had that personal touch. And then the horrendous treatment they get when they kind of want to leave and they put into camps and then eventually sent out. And honestly, the stuff this guy and this family go through is harrowing on every level, but it's fascinating as well to read, to understand what these people's experiences were and what they would do to actually achieve a better life for themselves and their family. It's an amazing read. The artwork is really kind of striking and the colour palette really interesting and thematically, you know, links in massively. It's a great read. I've put this in a video already. A video might be out already, it might not be, but it goes much more in detail into this book, so I'll leave a link in the description. It will be on the channel at some point. My number 1 read is the BPRD Omnibus series. So glad that I jumped back into picking up this series because I had read it many years ago. I had hardcover versions of this many years ago and sold them on because I didn't have the space and I thought I didn't want to continue it. And I thought, right, I'll move on to other things. What a mistake, because I've revisited all of the volumes that are currently out, and there's currently 8 in my possession. Various creators, various artists, various everything, charting the story of the BPRD separate from Hellboy. They going off and fighting all manner of, you know, monsters and mythical beings. This gripped me right from the first volume again. I had forgotten how gripping and how interesting the story was, but not only that, how the story was presented in terms of, in a very similar way to Hellboy. Hellboy often kind of has a story where there's stuff happening in the world that creeps in now and again, but it's not the focus. The focus is the characters and the situation in front of you. And that's the same here, is there's all these gigantic world-changing things going on, and monsters and life changing drastically, but they are kind of laser focused on the members of the BPRD and the people connected with that organisation, and through their kind of experiences and their emotions and their personalities, it's such a great experience because the characters are all super flawed as well. And again, they mention in it how ridiculous it is that, you know, one of the last lines of hope against these paranormal and seismic activities going on is, you know, Abe Sapien, Liz Sherman, Roger the Homunculus, you know, Johan, all of these characters and many, many more come in, and they've all got such kind of interesting backstories that are teased out sometimes, but sometimes quite immediate. But there's nothing that I really disliked about it at all. I really enjoyed every single volume, and as soon as I finished one, I had to pick up the next. And thankfully, these are going to be ending soon, so I can get a culmination. But the omnibus versions are kind of chronologically taken into order, all of the BPRD up until, you know, Hell on Earth and just after, really. And yeah, I've thoroughly enjoyed this gigantic, mammoth, epic journey of the BPRD. And hopefully I'll keep enjoying it because volume 9 is on its way and 10 won't be long. That's my top 5 books for 2023. Thank you very much for watching. I will catch you on the next one.